And after we finish defeating Iran, which is being very badly defeated, pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States. Essentially, that's what it is. We have the blockade. No ships get through unless we want them to.
So, was he joking? Trump just said something that sounds almost unbelievable. Speaking in New York on Friday, he said that once the United States finishes defeating Iran, pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States. Then he went even further. Trump said America already has the blockade, and, in his words, no ships get through unless the United States wants them to. Now, he said some of this with a smile, almost like he was having a little fun with it. So was he joking? Was he exaggerating? Or was he actually telling us what he wants to do? Maybe that's the wrong question, because whether Trump was joking or not, the fight over the Strait of Hormuz is very real. Trump says America is in control. Iran says absolutely not. And somewhere between those two claims are oil tankers, shipping companies, insurance companies, and, eventually, your local gas station. So forget the speeches for a minute. Forget who sounds tougher. Here's the question that actually matters. The United States has the most powerful navy in the world. But can Trump really control the Strait of Hormuz? Not just attack it. Not just blockade it. Actually control it. Keep ships moving. Keep Iran from shutting it down. And do all of that without making Americans pay a serious price back home. That's the part worth looking at. Because once you get past the headlines, this story gets a lot more complicated. First, look at the map. The Strait of Hormuz sits between Iran and Oman. At its narrowest point, it's only about 21 miles wide. 21 miles. That sounds pretty big until you realize how much of the world's energy has to squeeze through it. And the ships aren't using all 21 miles. Commercial tankers move through much narrower shipping lanes. Think about that for a second. You have this enormous global oil business. Saudi oil, Emirati oil, Qatari gas, tankers worth hundreds of millions of dollars, all moving through a very small piece of water. In normal times, roughly 1/5 of the oil consumed around the world passes through this area. A major share of the world's liquefied natural gas moves through here too. That's why Hormuz matters. It's not important because politicians say it's important. It's important because the world economy has built itself around it. If everything is calm, most Americans never think about the Strait of Hormuz. Why would they? It's thousands of miles away. But when something goes wrong there, suddenly everybody cares. Because oil traders care, shipping companies care, insurance companies care, and eventually your neighborhood gas station cares. That's how a conflict thousands of miles away ends up showing up on a gas pump in New York, Texas, California, or Ohio. So this isn't just some foreign policy argument happening on the other side of the world. It can become a household budget story very quickly. And that's what makes Trump's claim so important. This week, Trump went beyond saying America was winning. He went beyond saying the Navy was dominant. He talked about the strait itself. He said that after Iran is defeated, he could soon declare the Strait of Hormuz American territory. And he argued that America already effectively controls it because of the blockade. Iran's answer? Basically, no, you don't. Iranian officials pushed back immediately. Their message was that you don't take control of the Strait of Hormuz with a speech. You don't take it with a tweet, and you don't automatically own it because you have aircraft carriers nearby. Tehran's position is that Iran remains the power that can determine what happens along its side of this waterway. So now we have two completely different versions of reality. Washington says, we're in control. Tehran says, you're not. Which one is true? Well, That's where things get interesting. Because even something that sounds simple, like figuring out how much oil is actually getting through, has become surprisingly difficult. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright has talked about flows approaching 9 million barrels a day on a 7-day average. Some independent ship tracking estimates have been much lower. Why the difference? Part of the problem is that some ships aren't broadcasting normally. Tracking systems can go dark. Routes become harder to verify. Different organizations use different methods to estimate what's moving. So when somebody tells you, we completely control Hormuz, there's a very simple question to ask. What does control actually mean? Because if nobody can even agree on exactly how much oil is getting through, maybe this isn't as simple as planting a flag on a map. And this is the part that matters most. The United States Navy is extraordinarily powerful. That's not really the debate. The question is whether military superiority automatically gives you lasting control over a place like Hormuz. And it doesn't work quite that simply. Start with geography. Iran sits right along the northern side of the strait. It doesn't need a navy bigger than America's. It doesn't need 10 aircraft carriers. It doesn't even need to win a traditional naval battle. It just needs to make the strait dangerous enough that commercial shipping starts getting nervous. And that changes everything. Because here's something people sometimes forget. An American destroyer and a commercial oil tanker are making completely different decisions. The destroyer gets orders. The tanker has owners. It has a crew. It has cargo. It has insurance. And somewhere in an office thousands of miles away, somebody is asking, are we really sending this ship through there today? That's where military power runs into commercial reality. Iran has several ways to raise that risk. Small fast boats, shore-based missiles, drones, and one of the oldest weapons in naval warfare, mines. Naval mines don't look impressive on television. They're not aircraft carriers, they're not stealth bombers, but that's exactly the point. They're relatively cheap, they're difficult to deal with, and you don't need hundreds of them to make shipping companies nervous. If there is a credible possibility that mines are sitting in a shipping lane, somebody has to clear them. That takes specialized equipment. It takes time. It puts people at risk. And even after you clear an area, you have to keep worrying about whether more mines have been placed. Meanwhile, what happens to insurance? What happens to shipping rates? What happens to oil prices? That's the real problem. Iran doesn't necessarily have to sink a fleet. It just has to make everybody wonder whether the next ship could be the one that gets hit. And once enough people start wondering, the market reacts before the shooting even starts. That's why I think the word control needs to be used carefully. There's a huge difference between being able to destroy something, being able to stop something, and being able to safely operate something. Those are three different levels of power. America can bring enormous military force into the region, but keeping commercial shipping moving safely, predictably, and cheaply is a different challenge. Because commercial shipping doesn't just need military superiority, it needs confidence. The captain needs confidence. The shipping company needs confidence. The insurer needs confidence. The oil buyer needs confidence. Everybody has to believe that tomorrow will look roughly like today, and war destroys exactly that kind of confidence. Here's another distinction that gets lost in political speeches. A blockade and actual control are not the same thing. A blockade is basically about saying, you're not going through. Control is harder. Control means you can go through, you can't, you go now, you wait, and we're going to make sure the system still works tomorrow, next week, and next month. That's a completely different job. Stopping traffic is one thing, guaranteeing traffic is another. And if Trump is talking about America actually controlling Hormuz for a long period of time, then the second part matters much more than the first. Because oil markets don't care who gives the toughest speech. They care whether the tanker gets through, and they care whether the next tanker will get through too. That's where this starts becoming expensive. Not necessarily because America can't put enough firepower in the region. America can. The question is how long you want to keep doing it. How many ships? How many sailors? How much mine clearing? How much protection? How much risk? And how long before the American public starts asking what all of this is costing them? Because eventually, every foreign policy decision comes home. And in this case, it may come home through the gas pump. Gasoline prices in the United States are now about 29% higher than they were a year ago, and Trump has basically told Americans that they may have to tolerate somewhat higher gasoline prices as part of the effort to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Maybe Americans accept that. Maybe they don't. But politically, that's a very different message from, we're going to bring your costs down. And that's where the Strait of Hormuz stops being just a military question. It becomes a political question. Because if this lasts a week, people may shrug it off. If it lasts months, that's different. Every time somebody fills an SUV, every time a trucking company buys diesel, every time transportation costs move higher, the war gets a little closer to home. And we're heading toward midterm elections. That matters. People don't walk into a voting booth carrying a map of the Strait of Hormuz. They walk in thinking about their mortgage, their grocery bill, their job, their retirement account, and yes, what it costs to fill up the car. That's the political gamble here. Trump wants to project strength abroad without allowing the cost of that strength to become a weakness at home. Every president wants that. But Hormuz makes that balancing act especially difficult because this little strip of water has a direct line into the global energy market, and the global energy market has a direct line into people's wallets. Now we can finally come back to the question we started with. Can Trump control the Strait of Hormuz? The United States clearly has enormous military power in the region. But military dominance and permanent control are not the same thing. America may be able to destroy threats. It may be able to block traffic. It may be able to escort ships. It may be able to impose tremendous costs on Iran. But maintaining a strait that is open, safe, and operating on American terms over a long period of time, that's a much bigger claim. Because Iran doesn't have to be stronger than America to make Hormuz expensive. It just has to remain capable of creating uncertainty, and uncertainty is poison for commercial shipping. So when Trump says America controls Hormuz, don't just ask whether America has the bigger navy. Of course it does. Ask the harder question, can America turn military superiority into safe, predictable commercial traffic? And keep doing it without the economic cost becoming unacceptable back home? That's the question nobody can answer with a slogan. And maybe that's the most important part of this entire story. In politics, everybody has a version of events. Trump has his. Iran has theirs. Every government wants you to look at the picture from its side. But eventually, reality gets a vote. The ships either get through or they don't. The oil moves or it doesn't. The price at the pump rises or it falls. And promises eventually run into facts. That's why the truth matters. Not because it's always comfortable, not because it helps one side or hurts the other, but because when the speeches are over, the truth is what we're left with. And around here, the truth is worth more than gold. I'm Austin Lee. Thanks for watching Truth. I'll see you in the next one.